Hi, I'm making this video because there's just been a bit of a mix-up in the community recently about 5th generation Ecodiscs. Now, as far as I know, there is no such thing as 5th generation Ecodiscs, and I think if you ask Benno, he would say the same thing. So yeah, I'm pretty sure there's no such thing as 5th generation Ecodiscs, and there's been a lot of mistakes. See this one, 5th generation Ecodisc. As you can see here, if you type in 5th generation Ecodisc, there's loads of results. 5th generation Ecodisc. See, there's a lot of confusing results. See, there's a lot of people think there's actually such thing as a 5th generation Ecodisc. But I'm pretty sure there's not. I don't think there's such thing as a 5th generation Ecodisc. So let's go through the history of the Ecodisc, shall we? So right at the beginning, Cone released in the late 90s. Cone released their very first Ecodisc design. It was a 1st generation Ecodisc, and it was an amazing lift. It was revolutionary, and it's just an absolutely amazing lift, and it could do full intention leveling and pre-doors. It was epic. So let's move on a few years. So a few years later, they released 2nd generation Ecodisc, and they fixed a few problems, and it was really nice and clunky. And the 2nd generation Ecodisc was just a really nice lift. They updated the fixtures, and this is when they came out with KSS, because the fixtures they used for the 1st generation Ecodiscs were Sigma. Okay, so just before we move on to the 3rd generation Ecodisc, let's take a look at the so-called 1.5 generation Ecodisc. Now, this is so in the middle of Cone, when they in them making the 2nd generation Ecodisc, in the middle when they were switching over, it got a bit mixed up. Sometimes there was 1st generation Ecodiscs with 2nd generation fixtures, which is what this is, and the Juice Grove voice and not the original voice. And the Juice Grove voice and not the old Ecodisc, not the proper Ecodisc voice. Or sometimes it might be the other way around, though I've never seen a lift like that. I've only ever seen 1st generation Ecodiscs, but with 2nd generation fixtures. And the name that a lot of lift enthusiasts have made up for them is 1.5 generation Ecodisc. A 1.5 generation Ecodisc. However, this isn't the proper name for them. It was just some what they just used. It was just in the changeover period, and the buttons got mixed around and they were used on other lifts, and it was when they were just using all the parts, and they were just all the parts. They just needed to get all the 1st generation parts, and they stopped making them. And they wanted so that was a bit of a mix up. They used different parts and different lifts, and it was in their changeover period. So it's not really called 1.5 generation Ecodisc, but you could call it that, and it makes sense because it was like 1st generation. It wasn't 1st generation. It wasn't 2nd generation. It was 1.5 generation. So yeah, now moving on. So this is the 3rd generation Ecodisc, and this is a very popular model of Ecodisc. They updated the design, they got rid of most of the clunk, but not all of it. Well, I don't know. I'll say that to later. They got rid of more of the clunk, and maybe not more of the clunk, but it was 3rd generation Ecodisc, very popular, maybe the most common. I'm not sure. Maybe 2nd generation is a bit more common, but 3rd generation is very. Did I just say 2nd generation was the most popular just back then? Oh, I don't know. 2nd generation and 3rd generation are both very common, and 3rd generation is the one which goes doom doom. it goes do at the beginning, and that's it's very common design of lift. And you could say it's a 2.5 generation Ecodisc, because a lot of third generation Ecodiscs had second generation fixtures, some second generation Ecodiscs had third generation fixtures, but I'm not really gonna. And before there was a fourth generation Ecodisc, people were actually coming up with a fourth design of Ecodisc. And on Benno's website ages ago, he probably wouldn't say this now, but because there's that proper fourth generation Ecodisc, or it's just, he's, as everyone knows a lot more about Ecodisc. Everyone knows a lot more about the Ecodisc model lineup now, but some people did call them fourth generation Ecodiscs, including Benno, but that was years and years and years and years ago, and I don't know, that was kind of they did a massive design change, and some people did call them fourth generation Ecodiscs, but that wasn't the proper name for them. But the 2.5 generation Ecodisc, I'm not going to say as a proper, and I've never heard someone say a 2.5 generation Ecodisc, because there's just so many third generation Ecodiscs use second generation fixtures, because they did continue to make second generation fixtures after, and actually no, they did continue to make second generation Ecodiscs as well, and third generation Ecodiscs right up until they started the fourth generation Ecodisc. Well, of course they did. Of course they kept on making third generation Ecodiscs, but I think they did continue to make second generation Ecodiscs, the more budget design, right up until they made the fourth generation Ecodisc. And I think they might have come up with some of the newer, like Porsche KSS, even just before the third generation with the second generation. I don't think as soon as it came out, but I think they might have come up with some. Maybe they did carry on to make the half Sigma, like half Delta Sigma Porsche fixtures, like the rectangular ones, until they came up with like Porsche KSS. But I'm not too sure. Oh, that was quite posh back then. Posh. You could make the KSS look a lot posher, like the 470 or 420. I'm not too sure, but I don't know. But it's a bit confusing. It was second generation, third generation. It was really confusing. They used loads of different fixtures. It was very, very confusing, and it was probably that was what you'd say the big jump when Cone went from not being very confusing to very, very confusing with all the different lines of KSS. Anyway, this is the third generation, and I wouldn't say it's 2.5 generation, like I said, because there was so many different second generation, third generation Ecodiscs using different KSS fixtures, and it wasn't because they were trying to get rid of all the parts. It was actually because they continued to make those parts. So now moving on. Okay, so this is the fourth generation Ecodisc, and maybe they did continue to make KSS. Third generation Ecodiscs a bit after they released the fourth generation Ecodisc, because I've seen some third generation Ecodiscs with what people call fourth generation fixtures, but maybe they did just really like KSS 570 metal metal fixtures. But I think they did. I think they were just fixtures that I think they did release them with the third generation Ecodisc, but then used them a lot on the fourth generation Ecodiscs. Again, I think there was those you could get KSS 570 metal fixtures, or whatever they're called. I don't know, maybe not. You know what I mean? Those metal ones that a lot of Debenhams stores had, and a lot of Debenhams stores had them. Yeah, you know what I mean. But you could get them before the fourth generation Ecodiscs. I think they started making fourth generation Ecodiscs, I think. But anyway, fourth generation Ecodiscs were a complete redesign. Okay, so for example, let's look at the motors. Let's look at an old MX motor versus the new NMX motor. So this is the MX6 motor. This is the older design. This is the MX. And now let's take a look at the NMX07 motor. And here is the NMX07 motor, and you can see how different the two are. This was a complete redesign. They completely redesigned the Ecodisc here. So, what is a fifth generation Ecodisc? Is it a complete redesign of? Is it a complete redesign of Ecodisc? Is it a completely redesigned Ecodisc? with new fixtures and loads of wonderful things. Is it when they released KSS 280? Did they change around the motors? Is it now they've got the new black ringed fixtures? Are the black rings is it about the black rings so you can tell fourth and fifth generation apart? Actually, no. All the fifth generation is an Ecodisc with KCE. Just a normal fourth generation Ecodisc with KCE. Because recently Econ have changed their logic. They've moved from the Epic LCE to a not as good KCE, but still very good. And that's all the fifth generation Ecodisc is. It's not a proper model of Ecodisc. The motor's still fourth generation. They're still using the original NMX motors. They've not updated the NMX design, as far as I know. It is just fourth generation Ecodiscs, NMX Ecodiscs, using the new logic, and that is it. It is just it. That is when they release KCE. People now a lot of people seem to think that it's a fifth generation Ecodisc, and they've changed the motor as well. But there's no such thing as a fifth generation Ecodisc. It is just a fourth generation Ecodisc with KCE. Bye.